Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Resilient Strategies for Sustainable Business Operations Workshop. I'm your host, Christina Paredes, and we're happy to have you join us today as we talk about the many resources to help you guide you through hurricane season, natural disasters, health pandemics, as well as man-made disasters that may affect your businesses. I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to our wonderful panel today. We have the Leon County Emergency Management Director, Kevin Peters. Hi, Kevin. Thank you for joining us today. The Florida Department of Economic Opportunities Emergency Management Director, Beverly. Hi, Beverly. Thanks for joining us today. The Capital City Bank Senior Vice President of Corporate Security and Risk, Leanne Stallenberg. Hi, Leanne. Thanks for joining us. And then our FAMU SBDC Assistant Regional Director, Andre McLaughlin. Hi, Andre. Thank you for being part of our panel today. I'd like to encourage everyone that has a question or comment to share those with us in the chat box or Zoom, or if you're on Facebook, please use those comments and we'll make sure that we'll get those to our panelists as we've set aside time to answer any questions that you had. Just a reminder, when we're faced with a hurricane, is that's in our community and in that cone or any type of natural disaster, the Office of Economic Vitality works very closely with the partners that you see here to communicate key sources of information, both before the storm, during the storm, and after the storm. It's very important that we all kind of work together to make sure that you have the information that you need to prepare, respond, and recover. And with that, I'd like to welcome Kevin Peters here. Again, Kevin is the Leon County Division of Emergency Management Director, and let him kick off the discussion today. Kevin, the floor is yours.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I got two mute things going on here, so I just wanted to make sure before I did that. I'm going to do the share screen. Christina, thanks for having me this morning. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of information with the participants. We're going to just jump right in with a look at hurricane season 2020. This is the forecast from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the parent organization to the National Hurricane Center. Their forecast is for 13 to 19 named storms. Of those, 6 to 10 may become hurricanes, and 3 to 6 of those hurricanes could become major hurricanes, which are Category 3s or higher. The pie chart on the left shows the probability of season activity, and right now we're looking at a 60% chance of an above normal season. To provide a little bit of context or additional context, on average, a normal hurricane season could consist generally of 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes. So really even a normal season, it can be quite active, but in this we are looking at the potential for an overactive season. That being said, it doesn't tell us anything about our risk here in Leon County right now or the Big Bend, so it's vital that we're prepared for anything that may happen this hurricane season because we just don't know yet. On a side note, we've already set a couple of records for hurricane season. This year, 2020, we've got to our C named storm, which is Cristobal, the earliest that we've ever had our third named storm or our C storm in history. So on June 1st, we're already up to the letter C for hurricane season. So we've had an early start. Again, the forecast here also shows a likelihood for an above average season. So on top of some of the other things we've seen this year, whether it's COVID or the tornado we've had in northern Leon County back in April, or the risk for some wildfires we saw in southern Leon County a few weeks ago. It's been an active year for natural disaster potential, and it just drives home the point that being prepared isn't just a hurricane season thing. Being prepared is something we need to do all year long because disaster really knows no season in the state of Florida. All right here. So my slideshow has slightly frozen up. I'm not really sure what's going on with it, so we're going to stop the share for just a second. So being prepared is going to be very important, and one of the tools that we have that's critically important here for our citizens is our disaster survival guide. And escape here. So anyways, I'm going to jump on to this real quick. Our disaster survival guide, and it's probably a mirror image right now on the screen. I apologize for that. We produce the guide annually. It's designed to get you through all the phases of disaster, whether it's preparing before a storm, what you do during a storm, the ACT phase, and how to recover, how to get your life back together following the impact of a disaster. And it's not just hurricane survival. In the past, it used to be the Hurricane Survival Guide, but a couple years back, we adjusted it to the Disaster Survival Guide. It provides steps on being prepared for everything from hurricanes to flooding to human-caused disasters such as active shooter events. And there's also information now this year on COVID-19 and how to continue to stay safe as we move through the remainder of what we're going to deal with COVID-19. Obviously, we don't know when the disease will go away. We don't know when a vaccine will be available. So there's some steps in there to staying prepared through the remainder of the summer and even into the fall with COVID-19 as part of our lives. This year, something a little different. We didn't have the opportunity to have our Build Your Bucket campaign that happens usually before hurricane season. It's usually a big event where we bring members of the community together. They get some face-to-face time with organizations that help during disasters, like the Red Cross or the Salvation Army or Animal Control, different organizations like that. Usually it's a face-to-face event. People get the chance to build their bucket, get some starter disaster supply kit items, and they get to speak one-on-one with the practitioners who are out there helping during disasters to help individuals become better prepared for disaster themselves. What we've done this year, though, is made it virtual. If you go on the county's website, www.leoncountyfl.gov/build your bucket, you can find all the information about building your disaster supply kit, building your disaster bucket. It's all in a virtual format this year. We wanted folks to be able to stay prepared even without our face-to-face event. To help our messaging and being prepared and to play the bucket piece out, we've got our very own disaster mascot. His name is Billy Bucket. You can follow him on Twitter at Real Billy Bucket. I'm a little confused when I say that, I get tongue-tied, but he's at Real Billy Bucket. And you'll find tips on being prepared throughout hurricane season, on things you should have in your disaster supply kit. He's going to be a valuable member of our emergency management team moving forward in the future, not just in building bucket supplies, but we are really looking forward to the opportunity when we can all gather again and we have the opportunity to go out to schools or other opportunities to engage with the youth of our community with Billy to teach that disaster preparedness to the youngsters in our community, those folks that will hopefully grow up with that seed of being prepared all the time, planted in their minds. So as they grow up and they become our future leaders and our future business owners, they'll have that background knowledge of being prepared and what that means from an early age, hopefully from things they learned from Billy Bucket. So those are kind of the big things we've got right now, and things we just wanted everybody to remember is that a prepared community is a resilient community. Get your copy of the Disaster Survival Guide if you've not got it yet. It's available at Leon County libraries, Leon County community centers. You can call the emergency management office. We can get you some copies. But you can also get it online. Its website is www.haveahurricaneplan.com. You can download the guide there, go through the guide itself. Remember the Leon County website, leoncountyfl.gov/build your bucket for the latest on building your bucket this year. And follow Billy Bucket on Twitter at Real Billy Bucket. Christina, I apologize, my slideshow kind of went hectic there on me, but I think those are the key points I had that I wanted to share. And just remind everybody, disasters are year long. We're in hurricane season now. Get prepared now, but as we've seen this year, disasters can happen any of the 12 months.
Thank you, Kevin. And your team just recently helped respond to the tornadoes that were in our area as well, correct?
Yes, April 23rd in the evening hours, right before sunset, we had an EF1 tornado. Winds were about 95 miles an hour. Came across northern Leon County, just south of the Bradfordville area. We were able to get our disaster assessment teams in the field, conducted a damage assessment. Approximately 47 homes were affected by the storm. It did give us a chance to walk through that process, get some teams in the field, refresh ourselves with the technology. Not that we weren't familiar with it, but it gave us just a chance to practice that damage assessment piece. That's something we do after hurricanes. We get our teams in the field to survey the impacts with homes. We also collect information on businesses we've observed that have been damaged, share that with Christina and her team to help them making sure that our local businesses are aware of all of the disaster and business recovery opportunities that there may be following a disaster. So they gave us a chance to practice that. Even during COVID, we're not able to do a lot of the normal planning, training exercises we might do pre-hurricane season with our staff because of COVID-19, but we were able to activate a couple of the teams, get some staff out there, and make sure that we are as prepared as we can be for any disaster that comes this summer.
Thanks, Kevin. And what are the top 3 things that each business should be aware of as they start planning for disaster?
Stay informed. The number one, information is power, right? So for businesses here, we'd urge them to download the Leon County Citizens Connect app, 24-hour-a-day information flow from the Emergency Operations Center, not just during hurricane season, but any time of the year, anytime there's severe weather or other significant hazards in the community. You'll receive information on that, as well as links to some of these sources on being prepared. For hurricane season specifically, check in with the National Hurricane Center website daily. That's what we do here in emergency management. The website for that, www.hurricanes.gov. So stay informed with that. So information, planning, being prepared, obviously there's things you can do to protect your business, and I think we may have some of the other speakers talk about those specifically. But if you as a business owner and your employees are not personally prepared, if you've not squared away things at home to, make sure your family is safe, your home is safe, your pets are taken care of, all those things, all the stuff that we talk about in the Disaster Survival Guide, if you and your employees aren't ready, nobody's going to be available to come to work and carry out your business. So the home business or the people taking care of their business at home is very important. It's one of the things that we make sure all of our government employees here in Leon County do, make sure that our employees are prepared at home so we can all come to serve the community during disaster times. What was it, 3 things? What was it? Information, be prepared, and again, follow the advice that you're going to get here. Obviously, there's things like business insurance and the continuity of operations plans and all the steps that you'll need to follow to bring business back online. If it's unfortunate that your business is directly impacted by the disaster, you want to make sure that you do have a plan for how do you get going again or restart things or keep things going during and after a disaster.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts and actions that we can take to both prepare our homes and our businesses. The information that Kevin gave you today on the Have a Plan, the Disaster Survival Guide, the Build Your Bucket, and the top 3 things that you should do are included in the Zoom chat. So please do send that out. And follow the emergency management on online too through social media. I just had an opportunity to pull a Billy the Bucket Twitter, and that is very creative. And what a great way to engage people. So, so thank you for that.
Yeah, we hope that kind of word kind of association, build your bucket, Billy Bucket, keeps it together in people's minds.
Beverly, thank you for for joining us today. We're very excited to have you here. Can you talk to us a little bit about the statewide tools and the Florida Disaster Business website and why that's important?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me today. It's really wonderful to get to join you and join you on this platform. We're all getting used to our teleworking, telemeeting spaces. So I am the emergency coordinating officer for my department, the Department of Economic Opportunity, and in that role, I lead our support function 18, which is business, industry, and economic stabilization. And we're currently activated at the State Emergency Operations Center in response to COVID-19. So we're here working every day. ESF 18 is the state level support for private sector in emergency preparedness, response, and recovery. And we kind of serve that liaison role for our partners to share information during an emergency event, almost an advocate for the businesses and the private sector needs in disaster response. And we really work to integrate the business community into disaster response and recovery. Our support function really is a public-private partnership. We bring our partners into the Emergency Operations Center or virtually these days. But we have partners across loads of state associations and trade associations and agencies, Florida Retail Federation, Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, the SBDC is one of our partners here, as well as, here today to talk to us, Florida Chamber and Visit Florida. So we try to draw in the business community through those partners. And we have several goals here at the state ESF 18. One of those main goals is information sharing. We want to provide that situational awareness to our partners in the private sector so they can make better decisions for their operations and understand some of the actions that government is taking at the state level. We also help to communicate resource availability and needs between the government and the private sector, as well as between businesses, so business to business support. Government can order resources for something like a hurricane, but sometimes it's more important that we are able to source locally or receive goods more quickly or easily after disaster impact. So that's an important piece of what we do. We also work to gather business status updates. And I know, Christina, that's something that you all do in the Leon County area too. We want to know who's open, who's closed. We want to better understand the need on the ground and communicate with the public where those goods and services may be available. Also, that helps us more strategically place resources like points of distribution after a disaster, so our local partners can be better informed as they're trying to make those decisions in response and recovery. We also use our business damage assessment survey. That's on our platform, floridadisaster.biz, our website. And that survey helps us understand, again, the impacts on the ground. It helps us activate, request, and really advocate for different recovery resources and sometimes some creative solutions so that businesses can recover more quickly and fully. So floridadisaster.biz is our website. During a disaster event, we share critical updates on that site, including situation reports, snapshot of essential elements of information tool, like provides county status, evacuation and curfew orders, major road closures, just a good kind of snapshot of what is happening in the state of Florida, and helps our business partners be able to move goods around or, again, make decisions based on what state and local governments are doing. That business damage assessment survey is available on that site as well. And after a disaster, we encourage any businesses, large or small, to fill that out. That is mobile friendly, so it allows you to quickly input that information. And it also allows small businesses to have a direct voice. Sometimes we focus on, at the state level, what our major partners, what impacts they have, your Publixes and Walmarts, but small businesses, we need to know what their impacts are as well. And so that business damage assessment survey really helps us get that information. Now, we also have a planning tool. So I know we're going to talk about a couple different planning tools today, and I would advocate that you use any one of those, whatever works for you. That planning tool on floridadisaster.biz helps pull tips. You input your information and it will pull tips specific to your business, best practices based on your responses to those questions. So businesses registered with floridadisaster.biz can store their plan in the system, and they can update it as needed as their situation may change. Planning really is even more important this year with the impacts of COVID-19, with the projected hurricane season forecast. We're anticipated to have what they're calling an overactive season, but we all know that it only really takes one storm, or not even a storm, a rain event or a tornado to really impact local business and have to activate your plan. So I think that it's important to keep in mind that each business plan is unique, and take advantage of the fact that we're working through a new normal now, and review your plan, make the updates that you've used from your experience with COVID-19 or teleworking or some of the mitigation measures. What changes have you had to make to your business, and how can you pull those best practices into your planning for business interruption for hurricane season? So with that, that's what I have to share today.
Thank you, Beverly. I appreciate that. Same question for you. What are the top 3 things that our businesses need to do to prepare?
I think Kevin was spot on with stay informed. You need to know what resources are available, and folks like us at the state level, Kevin at the local level, SBDCs, all of your partners are trying to share those as much as possible. So stay informed, stay engaged, be it on social media, through the news, understand what resources may be available to you. And then as well, your employees, if your employees are prepared, you may have the best business plan possible, but if you don't have your employees to help you, then you're not going to be able to reopen your business. And so I think that staying engaged, understanding what your employees may need to do or how that may change based on the current situation that we're in, having those conversations can help get you a lot of the way. And 1, 2, 3, this is always hard, but definitely utilize the practices that you've experienced. Be it, we've had a very active hurricane season, in the state of Florida for the last few years. We've experienced hurricanes just about every year. Take a look at what you did as a business, or what your fellow businesses may have done in those areas that were impacted, and learn from them, and take those best practices to grow your plan.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that's all the questions that we got from the panelists for you, Beverly. I also, for those of you listening, I have listed each one of the websites that Beverly referred to in the Zoom chat section. And do remember, if you have not registered for floridadisaster.biz, to please do so. It is a great website to help you and your business as you move forward. We've linked the disaster planning toolkit on there as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Beverly. And I'd like to introduce Leanne Stellenberg with the Capital City Bank. Thank you, Leanne, for joining us. I know your area of expertise is corporate security and risk. And thank you for talking with us today about building a disaster recovery plan. We appreciate you joining us, and the floor is yours. Oh, hold on, let me unmute you. There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Christina. And I agree with everything Kevin and Beverly have said. My role is to talk specifically about how to build a plan if you don't have a plan. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and this presentation will be sent to all of the registered attendees for today. All right. Can you see that? Are we good? All right. All right. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you is what exactly is a disaster recovery plan. We heard Kevin refer to it as a continuity of operations. It may be called a business continuity plan. And in general, what it really is, oh, I'm not going to page down. Come on. Oops, there we go. So a plan is really nothing more than a written document that you've thought through that will help you recover your business should you be hit with an event of some sort, catastrophic or otherwise. I think one of the things that Kevin, or maybe it was Beverly, mentioned is that these plans are unique. They're not specific. You can get a canned plan, but that's the high level concepts. You really have to think through how is your business impacted for each one of the concepts so that you can understand what you need to do to recover your business. Why would you need a plan? We're in hurricane season, and that's kind of what we focused on. But if you think about it, there's lots of different events that can cause your business to have an interruption or a disruption of some sort. And some of them could be pretty significant and costly to your organization. So natural disasters, I mean, we're thinking about pandemic and COVID. We're all dealing with that right now. It's a situation that we've not dealt with before. We're learning from that. Man-made disasters like a chemical spill. Have you thought about a chemical spill or some other type of toxic issue near your business that would require you to evacuate? Lots and lots of different things can happen. Everything from a hurricane to a tornado to a cybersecurity attack. All of those would need to have a plan in place so that you can respond instead of react. Because when you're responding, you have a thought out process of what you need to do. And if you're reacting, that's usually a gut punch. And sometimes you make a good call and sometimes you don't. So it's always better to have a plan. Statistics do show that for every dollar you spend on hazard mitigation or hazard planning and preparation, it saves society as a whole $4. So it's a really good investment, both for you and for your company, to plan ahead of time. It helps you save on the shutdown time period if you have to shut down. It also helps you save on time to implement your plan if you already have that in place. One of the things that I like to mention is you may have a lot of resources right at your fingertips, and we've talked about a lot of those this morning on the webinar. We've talked about websites that you can go to and Twitter accounts that you can follow and lots of things like that. But one of the things you might want to look into is, does your industry have some type of regulatory requirements that you need to make sure that you address in your disaster or emergency planning efforts? There's also, you may have industry groups or peer groups that you can connect with and talk through planning efforts and response efforts. Many times you'll find help and coordination of efforts that will reduce time and money for you to spend on your plan. Peer exchanges are a great way to get information and coordinate best practices and what other people have learned from previous events that they've had to deal with. And then webinars, just like we're on today, Office of Economic Vitality, the Chamber of Commerce. There are numerous resources for businesses in Leon County that you can really look into and take advantage of all of the help that they can provide. So the first thing you want to do is identify who's going to be responsible during a disaster. There's a lot of things that have to go into the planning, the logistics of having people move to wherever they're going to be, if there's a relocation required. All of those things need to be addressed at the time of the event or shortly there before. So what you want to do is have a team if you're able to do that. For small businesses, that might be one person, and having a checklist or an itemized plan to follow is one way to do that when you have a small team. If you're a larger business, you could have a task-oriented team. You may have one person responsible for communications to both your employees and your customers. You may have one person responsible for the technology changes that need to happen, any of those types of things. But the most important thing is to make sure that your team knows what their role is and that you include all of the team contact information in your plan. So should a team member need to reach out to another, there's a really good communication plan in place. It's a really big part of what you do. The communication is really huge in every area of your plan, from the preparation to the implementation to the recovery efforts. All of that needs to happen. And having a knowledgeable, trained staff to help you with that is a really good business plan to go with. So where are you going to start? I mean, that's kind of unique. I mentioned it's unique to everybody. Here are just some of the things you want to think about. What buildings or locations are you in? Do you have multiple locations that you need to think about? What about security for those locations during a hurricane? Do your security equipment systems work differently? Do you need to do anything with those? Do you need to have a recovery place to go if you have to relocate? Do you have a backup location to go to? What technology or systems would you need to have in place? For redundancy, if you have data that you need to make sure that you can get to, maybe your sales records or your supply records or whatever the case may be, you're going to want to have that technology available to you. And if the disaster happens at your data center, do you have that information at another location? Those are just things to think about. When you think about vital documents that you may need, you know, one of the things that comes to mind to me is that we never really thought about before COVID is if you're told to stay off the roads and only critical infrastructure people can be on the roads to go to work, how do you prove that you're a critical infrastructure person? What do you need to have? What kind of vital documents would you need to have to identify yourself to law enforcement and others to allow you to get to your place of business? Another thing you want to think about are your vendors. Who's supplying things to you, services or actual resources that they're supplying to your business? And can they still provide those in the event of a disaster? Or if they're in the middle of a disaster, what impact does that have on your organization? And how do you plan for that in advance? And then, of course, people. You know, we all rely on people, whether it be our employees or our customers, or the supply people that bring us things. We all rely on people. And how are we managing through our disaster with the people that we need to provide services to and that we need to help? So there are lots of different things to think about that you may need to include in your plan, such as things that are specific to a disaster. I think Kevin mentioned earlier, you have to make sure that your employees are set and that they're able to work and not have to worry about the disaster because they planned in advance. Some companies actually provide an area for employees to store supplies and get them when needed. Lots of different things to think about when you're talking about helping your employees and figuring out a way for them to be prepared as well. So all of these are just critical things you want to think through when you're trying to develop your plan to begin with. How do you determine if something is critical? If you think through what you do on a daily basis, there are many things that you could do that really don't have to be done on a certain time frame. So you want to ask yourself, can my company continue if I can't do this particular function or this particular service? If your company can't continue, I would say that's a high severity or high critical area. You want to think about short-term versus long-term. Can I do without this for a week or 2 weeks? And then you want to list that out. Make a list or determine what particular things you need to be doing in your business and things you need to provide your product or service. And as you list those out, identify how critical they are to the company's organization, because you may need to scale down what you do to only those things that are most critical. So once you've done that, part of that is how long can you go without a particular resource or a particular service that you have? If it's a while, maybe you won't need a service level agreement with your vendor. But if the vendor is providing a service or a product to you, and you absolutely have to have that for your company's work to continue, then you're going to want to have a service level agreement with that vendor to say, we agree that you're going to provide XYZ to me on this time frame. And there should definitely be some reimbursement to you should they not do that. So that's one thing to consider. And also you want to consider if something is not available to you, a resource or one of the functions that you perform, what is your workaround? How can you do that without the normal things that you use to do that function or service? So those are just some of the things you want to think through when you're thinking about your particular business. When you're doing your workarounds, identify every single thing you do and how you would do it without the normal resources that you have, and make sure that your workaround works. Try it out and say, well, if I think I can do it this way because my normal way is not available to me, does that work? Can you really do it that way? So there's really a whole cycle. We've talked about preparedness, response, recovery. There's a whole cycle of emergency planning that is critical. Prevention is one of the things that you do in advance before anything. They should be happening. Prevention activities should be happening all the time. Preparedness is that planning, making arrangements, training, education, and awareness so that everyone knows their role and what they need to do. Your employees and your customers will know how to get in touch with you should they need to. That's in your preparedness. Your response, those are those critical things you have to do at the time something is happening. Those are usually measured in hours or days or weeks. And then recovery is a much longer time frame. Sometimes that's measured in months or years. But this cycle goes on all the time. And if you keep that in your mind, you can think through all of the elements of emergency management planning and make sure that your business is covered. So when you're ready to document your plan, you've thought through all of these things we've talked about, write it down. That's the most important thing. Have it in a document that you can refer back to. You want to include important contact numbers. That might be employee numbers. It might be critical vendor numbers. You want to include every one of the workarounds that you've talked about. And then you want to determine how are you going to test these workarounds to make sure that they're operating the way that you think that they can. Communications, I really can't say enough about. It's one of the most critical elements of your plan. You want to stay informed, and we've talked about a number of ways that you can stay informed about the disaster that is happening. For hurricanes, we've talked about that. For COVID, each state health department has COVID response, so you want to look at that. Leon County has good information. The state of Florida has been lauded for their website and how well it's handled and the data that's there. So those are the things that you want to know is how can I stay informed of changes with regard to whatever this disaster may be. And then you're going to want to know how to contact your employees and your other resources during a storm. You can get some type of mass communication system. There's a lot of those out there. And if you're a smaller business, it may just simply be a calling tree where you call one person and they call others to make sure that everyone is okay, they're safe, and they're available to do whatever it is that you need them to do. The next thing you want to plan for is how are you going to communicate to your customers? There's a lot of great channels there. Social media is one good one. So how will you communicate throughout the time period? You have to train and test your plan. You want to make sure everybody understands it, and you want to practice it. The other thing you want to do is review it every single year, or when you do significant changes within your company. You may take on a new vendor. You may consolidate with another company. Those are all what we call triggering events that would require you to update your plan. And I recommend that you do that frequently and quickly if you make those types of changes. Your disaster recovery plan shouldn't cover just one disaster. You should think through everything that could possibly impact your company. Things like the pandemic, a data breach, a power failure, a chemical spill. A well-written plan would address any and all of these types of emergencies. So make sure that you're doing that as well. So with that, Christina, I'll turn that back over to you and say thank you very much for the time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys today.
Thank you, Leanne. And from your perspective, what are the top 3 things that businesses can do to prepare?
You're hearing the same thing from all of us. One is stay informed and have a plan. Know your plan, understand what your plan says, and have a really great way of executing your plan when you need to. The second one I'm going to add is, and we've talked about it, is make sure your employees and your customers know how to communicate with you, you know how to communicate with them, and make sure they're safe and okay. And then the third one is just make sure you take down the lessons learned, because I can tell you every time we've implemented our plan, we've learned a little more. I think that happens naturally as you execute a disaster recovery plan. Make sure you document those lessons that you learned and include them in your plan going forward. So those are the 3 things I would say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And such great practical advice for us to follow. very easy to implement. So thank you. I was thinking, as you were presenting, I was thinking through our own disaster plan here at the Office of Economic Vitality. Most of it revolves around Kevin telling me to get to the Emergency Operations Center, but making sure that all our employees know where they're supposed to be to help prepare and respond is important. We implemented a phone tree here system that worked very well during Hurricane Michael. And so that's just, thank you for sharing that advice. We really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
Well, now I'd like to introduce Andre McLaughlin. He is the Small Business Development Center at FAMU's Assistant Regional Director. Andre is going to go and talk with you about business continuation strategies before, during, and especially after disasters. That's when I run into contact with Andre the most, is post-disaster recovery and sharing those key business resources. So Andre, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christine. Let me see if I can get my screen to cooperate. There. Hope you see that.
Yes.
Good morning again. As you've been told, I am the Assistant Regional Director for the Florida Small Business Development Center at FAMU. And I'm here to talk to you about what is available to various business owners who need to prepare for post-storm assistance and what's available locally. But also I want to talk to you a few minutes about what we do in the entirety of helping small businesses plan for disasters. So therefore, I'm going to focus on two areas in my discussion, and that is how our disaster planning services, as well as our disaster recovery assistance services. I would like to start by just reminding everyone that the state of Florida is really big on small businesses. And as a result, our Florida Small Business Networks work very closely with the state of Florida and all of the agencies of the state of Florida to assist small businesses during the time of hurricane season. The Florida SBDC at FAMU therefore assists not only the companies in the Metro Tallahassee area, also assists wherever we're needed when a disaster strikes in terms of preparation and recovery from disasters like hurricanes. Now, we've all heard about business failure rates, and one of the things we tout a lot or talk about, especially in the line of work that I'm in, is how long does a new business succeed? And we've all heard that 50% of small businesses fail in the first 5 years. I want to talk to you about another failure rate. And that failure rate is what happens if your businesses fail to prepare for a disaster. I can tell you that 100% of the reason for failure when it comes to a disaster has to do with lack of preparation. And you're hearing a lot of that during all the presenters who've been came before me. And on the chart, you can see how contingency planning is associated with operations, communications, and all of the things that's been outlined. Even cybersecurity needs to be put on the table when you're thinking about what should you do in times of disaster. And I'm so glad that Leanne, as well as Kevin, reminded us that disasters cover a number of areas. Not only does it cover hurricanes, it covers every type of disaster that might come your way. So now, we're here at the local SBDC is able to assist you in preparing for these type categories. We can outline for you or help you if you're having trouble laying one out, outline your strategies, your procedures, your plans for each one of the type of disasters that is listed on the chart. And you can see it covers a broad area of things, all the way from cybersecurity attacks to radiological emergencies, power outages, civil unrest, pandemics, the like. And so we are heavily involved when any disaster hits, not only after, but before and during. And one thing that we do as a network is we like to provide our businesses with assistance both before, during, and after a disaster. And we do that by bringing an RV to the areas that are affected the most in this process. So we recently acquired some new RVs, and we've got some mini RVs that we're going to deploy in the areas where they're needed. And basically they're deployed at the request of the local regional director for an SBDC area. Speaking of areas, this is what the area that we cover here in the Big Bend area. We cover everything, I guess, as far west as Liberty County and as far east as maybe Taylor. And you can see by the circle there, that's our regional coverage. So we cover or assist every small business that is going through difficulties in times of disaster with helping them recover, or if they need to plan before a particular event happens, then we will assist them with that as well. And how do we do that? We do that by partnering with a various number of agencies that you see on the screen, not only with all of our regional SBDC locations that you see on the map here, but also we partner with the SBA, the DLA, and the state of Florida and its various agencies to make sure that happens. We try to live up to the title that we've been given, and that is the designated state of Florida principal provider to small businesses, and they need assistance, especially in times like disasters. Now, how do we do that? We do that by deploying what we refer to as business continuation specialists. These people are specially trained and certified consultants that focus on increasing your chances of survivability. The network deploys a disaster response team to reply to the needs of the community, and we try to do it on the spot with areas hit hardest by hurricanes and storms and natural disasters. On a side note, our center will be in the near future certifying 2 additional certified business continuity professionals to come into our ranks to better deploy a service to businesses who operate in the Tallahassee metro region. These are some of the institutions that we rely on most heavily during times of disaster. And you can see some of the ones at the top that is very notable. But I just want to remind business owners not to forget to reach out to their small business development center in their area, and especially as it pertains to the Metro Tallahassee area, please reach out to the Small Business Development Center at FAMU. They can provide a numerous assistance that you might need when you're going through times like those. Now I'd like to turn our attention to our disaster recovery systems. This chart poses a question, but this chart also points out that part of your disaster planning is knowing what to do during and immediately after a disaster hits. How you approach the disaster recovery can determine whether your business is really able to recover. And that's the very salient point of this particular slide. Now, here are some really simple steps that we like to call basic smooth recovery steps, and some things you need to think about when you're going through a particular disaster. Document your damage and impact. Get out your camera, get your pad, make sure you document everything that you see. Call your insurance agent and make sure that everything you've documented is pointed out to him. Contact your local SBDC, because we not only can provide you with a direct assistance, and what I mean by direct assistance, we can be with you throughout the entire operation if you like. Communicate with your customers, suppliers, and employees. So much like of what Leanne just said earlier. That's very highly critical. And then if you need to, if the situation demands, file for a tax extension if that's necessary. And then avoid at all costs any contractor Florida scams that might come your way during times like those. Now, let's talk about the type of loans that's available to a business that needs to recover after a disaster hit. The first one, which we worked very closely with the Department of Economic Opportunity, is the Florida Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan. And we have been heavily involved with this process with the Hurricane Michael especially, and also with the COVID-19 situation. And what these loans are is basically what you see highlighted on the screen. They are short-term, and I want to emphasize short-term loans that are designed to give immediate working capital interest-free to allow businesses to recover. It's intended to bridge the gap to help you get your funds or resources in place that's going to provide the long-term recovery that you need, such as an insurance or a federal disaster loan or something like that. It's not a grant, it is a loan. The state of Florida intends you to repay that loan. Next, we help you understand, I would like to help you understand about eligibility. Given COVID-19, most of you all are probably familiar with this because we had so many businesses that were affected by it that you probably know some of these things by heart. You have to be a for-profit business. You can't be a non-profit business to provide for the emergency bridge loan. Also, you've got to demonstrate that you had some economic or physical damage. They're just not going to give you a loan because you say you want it. So you have to demonstrate that. Also, you have to be in operation prior to the disaster and not something that's created after disaster occurred. Then last but not least, you have to have at least 2 to 100 employees to qualify for it. Now, there's very specific requirements identified about who or what the state of Florida considers to be an employee, and you can see some of it outlined here on the screen. I won't go to all of that detail with you, but the 1099 employees are typically not included. However, on occasion, like it happened with COVID-19, I believe the state of Florida made an exception to this and allowed the 1099 employees to be covered. These loans can be up to $50,000. The term is usually 1 year in order for you to repay the loan. It is interest-free, as I said earlier. No payments have to be made during the term of the loan, but it is expected for it to be paid off at the end of the term. If you do not pay off your loan, then you'll be subject to penalty, and the penalty will be 12% annum on the unpaid balance for the term that's left out there for you. So those are the type things you will face, as well as your loan will technically be considered to be in default. Next, and this is where we help most. We help you prepare your paperwork so that when you submit your paperwork, your success rates go up exponentially. We help you make certain that your business qualifies and that the people who are applying for a loan must own at least 51% of the business equity in that business. And so therefore, if you do not, we will tell you what you need to do in order to get there. Need to supply your business tax returns. We make sure that you have everything in order there, along with all of the schedules and appropriate documentation that goes along with it. And you can see some of the documents that will be required. Sole proprietor, which is your 1040, and along with your Schedule Cs and all of those type things, as well as partnerships, so that is a Form 1065 and all of the rest that you see on the screen there. I won't read it to you. Then individual tax returns are also going to be required, and you must have at least 2 years of those that you're going to provide. We make sure that all of the small businesses are aware of these requirements and make sure that paperwork is in fact in order. And these are some of the things we do. Now, during Hurricane Michael, as well as COVID-19, we assisted the Department of Economic Opportunity with handling all of the loans they had to process. and they had to process a lot during the COVID-19 situation. And therefore, we are involved directly in their Salesforce system and providing the services necessary to assist and facilitate business owners to get the loan approved that they need so much in order to survive. Now, when it comes to the federal side, we provide basically an economic injury, a federal disaster loan, excuse me. It covers both physical damage as well as economic injury. And these are the two type basic loans that they are provided for small businesses. Now, here are the basic terms of those loans. The disaster loan terms usually are determined by the SBA and is based upon the financial condition of the company. Based upon the information you submit, they determine whether your loan will be paid back over a period of time and what your payments will be. As an example, you can get, and this chart should have been changed, that should have been for disaster, but you can get a loan for 3.75%. That's what the COVID-19 people were charged here recently, and you can get those loans termed out up to 30 years. Okay, so these are some great tools or some avenues for small businesses to explore when facing disaster in terms of what funds they need in order to recover. So I'm closing with this. Please, if you have any questions, you can contact your SBDC, and we'll be certainly glad to help you out. And that includes what I've got to present.
Thanks, Andre. Thank you so much for that, especially the ends there where you went through each one of those disaster loans that are available for businesses seeking capital. One thing, same question I've asked everybody else. What's your advice, the top 3 things you think businesses need to do in order to be repaired?
I think we're basically saying the same thing, and that is, and let me stop sharing here. That is to plan. Planning is essential. If you don't plan, you're preparing to fail. So lay out your plan. The next thing I would like to say is revisit, okay? Because plans are not stagnant. They're dynamic. They need to be updated. And so therefore, every new piece of information you get, you need to update and modify your plan to make sure it incorporates what you think you would do and those kinds. So revisit. And the last thing I would like to say is rehearse. Rehearse your plan. We like to recommend that you do a tabletop rehearsal, okay? Where you put your key employees and key operatives around the table and their areas of responsibility, and you simulate a disaster and what will need to be done and how would it be done. And those kind of things will help you be more prepared when a disaster hits.
Thank you. That is very helpful information. I think, Kevin, you and your team do rehearsals all the time, don't you?
Yes, Christina. Well, at least other than this year, we've not been able to do as we'd hoped to this year. But yeah, that's a key part of being prepared for disaster. Just like a musician or an athlete, they're not going to perform at the top level unless they've rehearsed and practiced. And, so that's, it's no different than disaster response and getting ready for that extreme event. You got to practice the way that you want to perform.
Oh, thank you. Andre, there is a question here. Are there any grants available for nonprofits through the SBDC?
Not for disaster.
Yes.
No, there's no grants available, but there are loans available. Okay, the EIDL is available for nonprofits, and the disaster loans, federal disaster loans, are available to nonprofits.
Thank you. And that's that was in both for natural disasters and for the COVID-19.
Yes.
Pandemic, correct. Yes.
The federal loans cover any type of disaster. Okay. Now, there is a qualification, and that is it would have to be the president will have to declare the region a federal disaster zone. And once that happens, then everything federally is available to all businesses.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us today. You've certainly provided critical information for our businesses as they continue to prepare. And Andre, I like at the end there how you said that your plans are dynamic and should be updated and modified.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Leanne's presentation gives you a great opportunity too to kind of walk through those cycles and what you need to do as for your business. And don't forget to make sure you have signed up for local and state resources that were discussed by Kevin and Beverly. All those are very essential. You heard from each one of the presenters today that spoke about be informed so that you can be prepared. That's got to be one of the most important takeaways that we've heard from today. So thank you all very much. If you please follow us at OEB for Business to learn more information and to continue to stay informed on resources that are available. We'll make sure to communicate all that with you that our partners provide so that you have the most information that you need to make educated decisions on how to prepare your business. So thank you all very much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. And we will be putting this webinar on our YouTube page, as well as sending it out through our newsletters so that you can share that with your networks as well. Thank you all and have a wonderful day. And remember, stay informed and be prepared.